Stop me if you've heard this before, but as awesome as the first Terminator movie was, like Back to the Future after it, it suffers from the same time travel related issues as most movies in this genre do. That being, if you create a time machine to travel through time with the express intention of destroying the reason you travelled back in time in the first place, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, fourth dimensionally speaking. A big blue Jeremy Irons explains this concept quite well in Guy Pearce's Time Machine.
You built your time machine because of Emma's death. If she had lived, it would never have existed. So how could you use your machine to go back to save her? You are the inescapable result of your tragedy.
Guy is so determined to save his wife's life that it never occurs to him that it was his wife's death that made him make his time machine in the first place, so every effort to save her would always be thwarted by fate herself. I mean, the Terminator was doomed the second he broke out of his temporal bubble. Win or lose, he was endeavouring to create a future where there's either no resistance and the robots are triumphant, meaning there's no reason to travel back in time, or he himself is defeated and is therefore the reason for the creation of the robots in the first place, according to Terminator 2. Meaning that the fact he went back in time is the reason the technology to go back in time in the first place was developed from his brain chip. He either succeeded and negated his reason for being there in the first place, or was semi-destroyed and became the reason for his own creation. So, wait, if he went back and killed Sarah, he wouldn't have needed to go back at all, but because he did, that was the actual reason he was able to at all. But that doesn't work in a proper temporal timeline. You can't drive a car before it's built, and you can't reverse engineer something that doesn't exist yet, unless you're already in that alternative timeline Doc Brown mentioned in the garage in the alternative 1980. After deciding to take a break from all this new creating stuff for a while, I actually turned on the TV for the first time and flicked over to one of those channels that everyone normally skips on the way to something decent. I found a channel where they've shown the original Terminator, which is the reason I was inspired to make this little video, and it just happens to be at that scene with Sarah and Reese in the motel, complete with full orchestral accompaniment, when I was suddenly reminded of something I did at my grammar school when I was about 14. Now, grammar schools sound a little bit posh, but it's just a step above a secondary school for slightly smarter kids and hopefully a stepping stone to university. No such luck for me, I'm afraid. Totally corpsed my GCSEs and left at 16 to take on a shitty job with shitty wages earning £70 a week, cash in hand, half of which I'd blow in the fruit machine at the Greasy Spoon down the road on a Friday lunchtime. And after giving my mother £15 for living expenses, I was lucky to end up with £20 for the rest of the week. Plus I smoked at the time, so yeah, I was just chock full of sterling life choices back then, but I digress. Even though I was still at that tender age, I was already earning a part-time wage as a market stall gopher. I must have looked older at the time, as I was able to easily purchase a copy of that particular 18-rated movie at my local WH Smith's. Either that or the person serving me at the time gave less of a toss about their job than I did with mine a few years later. It was also around this time my inherent computer geekiness was coming to the fore, and I was spending most of my school lunch breaks in the IT room mucking around writing simple programs in BASIC on the old BBC Micros and RM Nimbuses, bare bones pre-Windows PCs with no operating system or hard drive, rock and indeed roll. This was back in 1987-1988. Back when kids didn't have individual laptops or tablets.
What?
We had rolling green blackboards and these babies. As it happens, we happen to have one of these TV stands in the corner of the IT room, and after a casual conversation about movies in general with a friend, I mentioned that I owned a copy of the recent and increasingly popular movie, and I was coerced into bringing it in. A week later, and we arranged to watch the film in 2 hits, what with lunch breaks only being an hour long. The first session started well enough, but after the second F-bomb was dropped on screen, I noticed a couple of members of the meagre audience had left the room. Having been at the grammar school for 18 months, I knew that the choicest of curse words were in regular use around the building, so I was surprised to see someone being offended by some colourful language. Turns out they weren't. Once word got out that there was an 18 certificate movie being shown in the IT room of a school full of younger children, of course everyone wanted to see it. In short order, there were at least 40 pupils inhabiting a room about a quarter of the size of your average Starbucks. The first session ended okay, finishing when the Terminator had just performed surgery on himself. I turn it off after that scene and, being children prone to debate, we have a surprisingly involved conversation about practical FX in a pre-CG movie world, and after reading the credits on the box, we all discover the names James Cameron and Stan Winston. Next day, next session. Word had really got out and the room was packed for the second half of the movie. Chairs were laid out before my arrival and a buffet table prepared, I shit you not. The lights were dimmed, and I offer a quick verbal recap for those that both hadn't watched the first half or hadn't seen the movie at all. At the time of these events, The Terminator had only been released in the cinema 2 to 3 years previously. This was way back when if you wanted to purchase a movie to watch at home, you had to wait. No such thing as a 6 to 8 week window from cinema to DVD/Blu-ray or even simultaneous digital releases. Oh no. No, you had to wait 6 months, and even then you could only rent the movie. You would have to wait another 3 to 4 months at least before you could purchase the inferior grade VHS cassette at your local media outlet. You could purchase a VHS at the same time as it was released to rent, but that would set you back at least £70 depending on the title. Now £70 is about £175 or $230 in today's money for a VHS copy of a movie that would degrade over time. Let that sink in for a while next time your stream buffers for 5 seconds. But anyway, so now everyone is up to speed, the second half of the movie starts and it's a shootout at the police station. A better start I couldn't have hoped for. All was going well and I was on track to becoming popular, or at least being known as that kid who brought an 18 rated movie into school. It's not long after that action-packed sequence the teacher came into the room, just as this scene begins. It seems as if he haven't realised what everyone is watching, even though the room is more populated with pupils than it has ever been, and I'm hoping against hope that he leaves before he hears anything his sensitive teacher ears shouldn't. What's that you're watching, boys?
Just a Terminator, sir.
Are you allowed to watch that?
Oh, yes.
But sure enough, just as he has one hand on the door to leave, the Terminator makes his choice selection and tells the landlord where to go.
Fuck you, asshole.
The teacher stops, and although no one is actually looking at him, they also know he has stopped. I can tell by their faces. Are you sure you're allowed to watch that?
Oh, yes.
Okay, fair enough. You boys, stop running! Just after this is when it starts to get really bloody awkward. I'm sure you know the movie, but just after the potty mouth scene is a scene where Kyle and Sarah check into the Tiki Motel, and I suddenly have a horrible realisation of what's coming up in the next 10 minutes or so.
Can I just check, has anyone seen this movie before?
No.
Okay, is anyone here devoutly religious?
No.
Has anyone here taken a vow of chastity? No, never mind, let's just watch the movie.
And then, barely 7 minutes later, there's an IT room full of pubescent teenage boys and abandoned computers, all with eyes transfixed on the screen as Michael Biehn grabs Linda Hamilton, and their pained expressions of lovemaking carry on for far too long, as the disturbing music swells and I try to look at anything except either the TV screen or the faces of those assembled, because gazing upon either would probably make me piss myself laughing and therefore spoil the moment. As the scene ends, I suddenly feel hypoxic as all those in attendance finally exhale all at once, and the room is suddenly full of nothing but carbon dioxide and a whole bunch of embarrassed 13 to 16-year-olds. The film carries on, is enjoyed, and ends. Hands are shook, backs are patted, my social status upgrade complete. Not long after, I was informed that although the ad hoc presentation was popular, it wasn't to be repeated, as it turns out the school would actually have to pay for a special licence. Which is a shame, because the following week I wanted to traumatise everybody with Poltergeist.